What is up, most distinguished patrons of this channel? Today I'm going to do kind of like a viewer request, and that is dealing with the fitment of common welding respirators and 3 common welding hoods. So let's get into it. So a viewer had asked me, I believe it was, whether or not this Miller mask would fit the Lincoln hood. And I thought, okay, I'll respond to that, but also, well, we could all learn a little bit more about fitment of these and these particular hoods. And you guys got to remember something. There's really 2 parts to this. One, the mask has to fit your face and seal properly. If it doesn't do that, you're not protecting your lungs. And 2, obviously, you need to find a mask that not only fits you, but also fits under the hood that you decide to use. And obviously, I only have 4 masks in front of us, and I only have 3 hoods. So this is not going to be the perfect end-all be-all guide to what fits what, but it should give you at least a ballpark idea. Now, I got to say this as well. These things aren't totally cheap. I mean, they don't give them to you for free through Amazon, but at $40 to $50, if you have to buy 2 of them to find one that works and then stick with it, well, you should do it. And I get it, it's $40 or $50, but everybody's face is different, and what fits me may not fit you and seal properly. So you got to get something that works for you in your situation. But at least this video will give you some information to where you can, I guess, predict what might fit so you don't waste money unnecessarily. So let's start out by looking at this Lincoln and comparing it with the 3 hoods. So this Lincoln Electric, which is called the XLR, is likely not made by Lincoln Electric, and it probably shares the same components with some other respirator on the market. And that's fine, because if it works and it's a P100 like this is, it will help filter that metal particle dust, grinder dust out of your breathing airway, your lungs, etc. So this mask, which I took off the harness that clips around your head, is a really good option for a lot of people out there. And the reason I say that, the filters are covered so sparks and other stuff doesn't tear up the filters. I find that they stay cleaner longer because of that as well. And what I really like is this little simple nose piece. Here is the valve that is a one-way valve that allows you to exhale. Well, by having this little plastic piece, it directs the airflow that you exhale downward. That is a big deal, because if you're wearing this and it's cold outside, your breath will fog up your screen, fog up your controls if you have an LCD screen on your controls for your hood. By having it go down, it prevents a lot of that. It's not perfect, but it's far better than if it just were to vent straight out. So I like that. And some of them on this video will have that, some won't, but that is a great feature and something, if I were you, I would look for. So let's look at the fit of this on all 3 helmets, and I'll give some comments. This particular respirator fits just fine in here. However, if you look on the sides here, there isn't that much room. And that is going to be the case with a lot of the hoods out there, not just the ones I'm going to have in this video and this mask. And that is because it is fairly wide. The good news is that, and this would sit somewhere about right here, because this directs the airflow down, you're not going to fog up this nearly as bad as one that you exhale straight out. The downside is that depending on what hood you have, this nose piece may interfere with controls, aka it will press buttons. And that's why it's important, if you're going to wear a respirator, that you adjust your headgear up here to possibly push this screen further away from your face, therefore the mask doesn't interfere with it. So most hoods out there will be compatible with this Lincoln respirator, but you may have to adjust the hood to fit better. But for the most part, when I wear it, it sits about right here. And for this hood, this will not interfere with the controls at all. So that will work. Let's look at the Miller. So the Miller hood is a little bit wider at the bottom here. It flares out, but the actual depth inside of here is about the same as the Lincoln. However, this fits, again, no problem. It's going to be a little bit claustrophobic for you if you are, just because you will see this in your peripheral vision and you will feel it touch from time to time on the side. Now this is, they were smart enough to have this cartridge recessed in here to where this nose piece or the valve cover will more or less touch here and likely not touch the screen or the buttons. So that is a benefit, but this is about the location that it will be. And I would say the Miller Infinity has more room than the Lincoln to fit this particular mask, so no real issue there. Let's look at the ESAB. So the ESAB, it fits about right here. And this, despite it looking tight on the sides, it's tight right here, but this is actually almost scooped out. So there's more room in the front to where you can kind of move your head actually quite a bit more in there, or the hood can move around your face. Even though it's tight down here, this fits, I would say, more generously than most of the other hoods. Also, where this valve hits lower than the screen, because this screen is wider and less tall than like the Lincoln. Your valve fits in here almost perfect and nothing touches the screen. Out of all the hoods, I would say that this Lincoln mask fits the ESAB the best because of how it's designed. It just, you know, you can see it just tucks right in there. So I really like the fit of this mask with the ESAB hood. Well, let's look at the next mask. This is the Miller P100 face mask. It's made by a company called GVS. Just buy it through GVS and save yourself some money. This mask is a lot different than the Lincoln one because clearly it's far narrower. The downside to this design is, well, it sits off your face a little bit more. The valve position is higher on the mask, which means it's probably going to interfere with more screens. And the valve comes straight out and vents that hot breath, moisture-laden breath of yours right on your screen. So in cold weather, you're probably going to have a much harder time with this interfering with your controls if you have an LCD display and fogging up your screen. Now, the one benefit to this is that if you're claustrophobic, this is so much narrower. It's literally half the width. So this, when it's on your face, you have more freedom of movement side to side, and it's probably less obtrusive, I guess would be the word I would use. With that said, let's look at the fit in all the hoods. So this Miller half mask sits about right here, and as you can see, there is unbelievable amounts of room to the left and to the right when you're wearing this. The downside is that this valve more or less touches right here. Depending on how your hood is adjusted, you may have to move this further away from your face in order to get this to fit and not interfere due to how far that valve protector is. And not only that, you are going to fog up this LCD screen and your display up here. Your cartridge will likely fog up in cold weather due to the fact that this vents straight out. It's inevitable that it will happen. So in that respect, that kind of sucks. But the fitment of this is probably going to be the least claustrophobic of any of them. It's just plan on it interfering with possible buttons and fogging up your screen. Now, if you have an excessively long face, aka the back of your dome to your nose, you may find that you have to adjust your hood all the way as far away from your face as you can. The downside to that is the hood's weight will now leverage against your neck via the headgear more, and it may be uncomfortable for long periods of time due to the stress, much like hanging a carrot off of a stick and a rope in front of you would probably hurt your neck. So it's something to think of, but the fitment is pretty good with this Lincoln hood. Now this Miller, the fitment is pretty good, very similar to what it is with the Lincoln. As you can see, you have unlimited room left and right. However, the valve tends to hit in this section right here, which is a little bit of an annoyance. Again, you would need to bring this off your face a little bit more maybe than you're used to, but it is compatible. I would say it's close to fitting as good as it does with the Lincoln. They're a horse apiece, to be honest, but it does fit and it's fairly comfortable. Again, the bigger issue, I think, is not with the hoods themselves. It's with the valve assembly and what you're going to be dealing with that. And this, like I said with the Lincoln, will have an issue with it fogging the screen as well. Now keep in mind, guys, this is actually the mask that I use the most where I work, and I use it under a Lincoln Viking and it works just fine. I'm just used to the fitment, and you know what? A little bit of discomfort and how this whole apparatus fits is better than a set of lungs. All right, let's look at the ESAB. So the ESAB, due to the design of this massive pocket here, this fits just fine. Clearly this, I mean, you got a cavern in here. The valve, for the most part, doesn't, for me, appear to interfere with the screen because it hits lower. This also would be less likely to fog the screen up simply because you're exhaling into this area below the screen. So the fitment of this is pretty much perfect for this, and I don't think you're going to get nearly the fogging with this hood as you would with the other ones with this Miller mask. All right, let's look at the next mask. So this is a P100 by Hobart. I don't believe that they themselves make it. As with any of these, they're probably a third-party manufacturer that's making them and branding them for them. This is a little bit unique. It's actually fairly hard to find. I find it at the local Farm and Fleet Farm stores to me, which is kind of like Tractor Supply Co. So a store like that. Tractor Supply Co. might even sell these, Northern Tool might, but they are available. A little bit different of a design. Now, the nice thing with this is the valve itself is actually located on the bottom. So as you exhale, that air comes out the bottom. Now let's face it, guys, hot air rises in the cold. You're still going to get hot, moisture-laden air that rises and likely fogs up your screen. However, this is far better than the Miller setup because of where it's aiming, and it will help keep that, fogging down. This particular mask is also kind of a blend of the sizes of the other ones. So it's not as wide as that Lincoln, and it's not as narrow but as long as the Miller. So this is actually a pretty decent design, and I'm not exactly sure why, Hobart sells this as their own, but the Miller one is a different mask, because I think in a lot of ways this is actually a pretty good mask. And I don't know why they wouldn't market it under the Miller name, but hey, it is what it is with that. So let's look at the fitment with the Lincoln. So the fitment of this, you have a lot of room in there, so it's probably not going to be super claustrophobic. I don't know if you can tell, but that valve, when this is in here, is hitting right here. So it's nowhere near the screen, which is really good. This is approximately where it would fit. The nice thing is because this is kind of flat and rounded, you're not going to be pressing or moving too many buttons more than likely. So that is a huge plus with this, and I would say the fitment of this mask and this Lincoln hood is not going to be an issue at all, and most of you out there would probably find this to work. Now the Miller hood also fits really well with this mask, and again, where this vents is completely under this, so you're venting as much air as you're going to get while wearing this is not going to hit your screens, so that is huge. It also is highly unlikely to press any of these buttons because, well, it's flat there. So that Miller specific mask, that nose piece or the vent may, depending on how you have your hood adjusted, may actually touch these. Unlikely, but it may. But this should be good. No issue with the fit, I would say. Now the ESAB hood, again, same deal. I think you already can predict that this is going to fit without issue. Now, one thing worth noting is because of where this actually fits and the fact that this is flat, it may actually catch this set button if you put enough force on it. Now, I'm going to give you some tips at the end of this video how to set your headgear up to where you don't have that as an issue, but because of how wide this is here, it's more or less a flat spot. I would say there's a probability you would accidentally press that. So that's something to consider, but again, the vent is where you want it. The fitment is really good, no real issues there. All right, let's look at this Klein Tools mask. So this Klein Tools mask, which I did do a review on in a previous video, is kind of an interesting design. The valve is actually concealed in here, and more or less in theory, the exhaust, your breath comes out the bottom. However, I believe that as you exhale, some of your exhaust is going to come out these side vents, which I haven't tested this in cold weather, but I would assume this would probably fog up your screen just as bad as the Miller would, if not worse. Not to mention you actually breathe your exhaled air out, or at least some of it. So I'm not a huge fan of this mask. It is rated as a P100 and for metal dust, so that does have the protection, but I don't know how well this would work as far as just functioning on a day-to-day with a welding hood, especially in the cold. But we can still look at the fitment, and this is probably a decent representation of some non-welding specific masks that are out there. Because you guys got to remember, a lot of them that are out there marketed as welding masks, at least some care was taken in the design of them to work better for particular hoods than others. And this is an example of something that wasn't really designed for a welding mask. It has the rating to where it can protect you, but the thought process was not for under a welding hood. But let's take a look at the fit anyways. So the fitment of this, as you can see, you have quite a bit of room to turn your head inside of here if you were to need to. And the location that it is seems to be okay. The downside is the nose piece here will interfere, I think, with any buttons or controls that you would have, because it more or less lands right here, and it's so tall, this whole section is going to be touched. So this fitting under this particular hood, again, it does fit, and if you adjust your headgear, it will work. But out of all of them, I would say you're probably going to have the most issue with it adjusting controls you don't want to. And again, that depends on what hood you're actually using and what positions you're welding in. But the fitment is okay, nothing really great. If you're claustrophobic, this would probably be a better option than the Lincoln respirator. Let's look at the Miller. So the Miller, this fits about right here. This one, I actually think you might have some fitment issues, and that is because of the distance from here to here and how far this sits off your face. You might have some clearance issues there, and it's possible more with this that it would actually touch buttons on it if this was very close to your face. So again, the fitment isn't the best with this. However, it would work, and clearly you have a fair amount of distance you can travel on both sides. So again, it's doable, not my preferred one, but it would work. Once again, the ESAB, this will fit just fine. The position of the nose piece is likely to scratch your screen here, and this is actually kind of already scratched as it is, but it is likely to press the set and mode button depending on how this is adjusted on your head. Definitely the set button would be a possibility. But for the most part, again, it fits just fine, and that has a lot to do with this hood was clearly designed with wearing respirators in mind with the way that they shaped this, because everything kind of fits in this. All right, let's talk about some tips. So any decent welding hood is going to be fully adjustable with the headgear, and it does matter. And I'm going to tell you right now, for most of these respirators, to get a proper fit, you probably will not be able to have the cartridge as close to your face as it normally would. Now, I'm going to show you this, but all of them have pretty much the same deal. You can push this button in, and it has 3 positions, some have 5, but more or less, this slider will adjust how close your face is to here, and you may have to adjust it a little bit out in order to get the clearance from your mask to the cartridge. Ideally, you would want a little bit of a gap between that so that your nose piece doesn't interfere, press buttons, scratch your screen. You get the idea. So if you have the adjustment, make use of it. Now, there's a couple other things regarding that that you probably didn't think of, and I'm here to share them with you because I've done some, we'll just call them mistakes, and one of which is I have adjusted this particular hood and other ones all the way out to get clearance with a mask, and then I don't remember the fact that this is now sitting, say this is my neck, further forward, and guess what happens? If you weld on a reflective surface or you're looking down like this and you're welding here, UV rays will come right up through here and it will burn the hell out of your neck. So my recommendation is, guys, that you should be wearing a button-up shirt or some kind of neck protector, and you should always wear it, even if you're not wearing one of these masks, because UV is very common to come through underneath here, and it's just going to be worse as you move it further away from your neck. It's going to create a bigger gap, and I'm living proof. I got a decent sunburn on my neck for the first time in a very long time because I didn't button my shirt up fully, did a little bit of welding, and now I'm the idiot. So don't be like me, don't be an idiot. So it's something to think of, that all of these will likely increase your exposure to UV on your neck. Now, beyond that, you also need to adjust, and this hood has it here. Most decent hoods have an adjustment for when this is clamped down on your head, how far it will tip down. If you don't adjust that adjuster properly, what will end up happening is this thing will more or less sit on your face on your mask. So you might have an okay distance from your nose and from your mask the way it is, but the helmet keeps hitting it. In that case, adjust this to where its bottom position is higher. Once again, be mindful of that UV ray that's going to come from underneath it and try and burn your neck. There's another thing that you can do, and I'll put a picture of it up right now, but you can put a bib on the bottom of this to help block out some of that UV and smoke from getting under your hood, and I would highly recommend getting one of those. The downside is they tend to add more weight to something that's probably heavy enough already, so it's something to keep in mind. But I personally wear one on my welding hood at work, and as a matter of fact, I'll grab it and show you. So here is my welding hood for work, and as you can see, it is well worn, and here is my Lincoln Electric bib, and it comes down and protects all that neck area from UV pretty good. And of course, when I got my neck sunburn, I was not wearing this, so imagine that. I'm so used to getting away with doing dumb stuff without buttoning my collar, for example, and then of course, you know, you don't wear this and you get burned. But this is a very solid option for you guys to help protect your neck, keep the smoke out, all good things. And you know what? Even if you don't want to buy these masks and you don't have one, you probably should invest in one of these. It will help you quite a bit to keep the crap out of your lungs. Everything counts. All right, let's go to conclusion. Out of all these masks, I wear the Miller a lot and it works for me, but for a lot of you guys, you probably wouldn't like it. The Lincoln is honestly my favorite out of all of them. I do use that at work as well, but if you're claustrophobic, I could see that being an issue. For a lot of you guys out there, I really think that the Miller will probably do the best. And the reason is, well, all the parts for it are readily available. It breathes really easy. I like this Hobart, but your ability to get parts for it is not as good as the Miller because the filters are like discs and they're just harder to find. So I guess the key takeaway here is you may, and I hate to say it, you may have to buy more than one of these to get one that works for you. I think I covered enough of fitment on this to give you a really good idea of what will work and what won't. But I get it, they're $50, but hey, if you buy one and it isn't working and you can't adjust your hood like I showed you how to and it just isn't working, look at another option. But hopefully this at least covered enough to where you can predict without wasting a ton of money of what might work. But if in doubt, I guess, buy the Lincoln. I know it'll work, and it'll work really well at not fogging up your screen because of the system that they have set up for it. So that would be my recommendation. And if you would like something more narrow, I would look at one of these two simply because they will fit with a lot more wiggle room inside your hood. With that said, hopefully you learned something on this. If you got any questions with this, feel free to leave a comment and I will answer it to the best of my ability. And keep in mind, I have only used these hoods and a few other ones, and the masks here are the predominant ones I use or have used. So if you're looking for what will fit what and I haven't used it, I can't give an opinion on it because I'm not sure. So anyways, with that said, thanks for sticking around. Until next time.